Have you ever wondered why is it that the kinder you are, the less respect you often receive? Why do people take advantage of the very heart that tries to serve them? The truth is, kindness without wisdom becomes weakness, and generosity without boundaries becomes abuse. We live in a world where people admire strength but exploit softness. They respect authority but ignore compassion. Today, we will uncover why kindness, when misunderstood, turns into disrespect, and how to guard your value without losing your heart. When goodness is mistaken for weakness, something very dangerous happens to the human spirit. You can give from the deepest part of your heart. You can serve with the purest of intentions, and yet people begin to see you not as strong, but as soft. They stop valuing your sacrifice, and they start abusing your silence. Have you noticed that sometimes the more you give, the less you are appreciated? The more patient you are, the more you are ignored. It is because the world often confuses kindness with weakness. True goodness is not weakness. In fact, it takes more strength to forgive than it does to fight. It takes more discipline to stay calm than to lose control. It takes more maturity to give, even when you don't receive in return. But here's the tragedy. When people cannot discern the strength behind your kindness, they begin to use you as a stepping stone. They take advantage of your heart, and slowly their disrespect grows. When you allow your goodness to be mistaken for weakness, people will push the boundaries further and further. First, they test your patience. Then they test your tolerance. And before you know it, they no longer respect your presence, your words, or your value. What was once seen as a gift becomes treated as a burden. What was once honor becomes dishonor, and what was once a blessing becomes abused. But hear me today, kindness must always be wrapped in wisdom. Goodness must be balanced with discernment. You cannot give all of yourself away without guarding your worth, because if you do, you are teaching others how to dishonor you. Yes, you may be gentle, but you are not fragile. Yes, you may be patient, but you are not powerless. Yes, you may be loving, but you are not to be used. The world does not always understand strength in silence, but silence does not mean absence of power. People must learn that your goodness is not a license for their abuse. They must understand that respect is not optional. It is essential. And if they cannot respect your kindness, then you must teach them with boundaries. So, let me ask you today, have you been in a place where your kindness was taken for granted, where your goodness was twisted into weakness? If so, you must rise up and remind them. Your heart is a treasure, your value is not negotiable, and your kindness is not weakness. Because if goodness is mistaken for weakness, it will always lead to exploitation. And once exploitation begins, it grows into something even deeper, even more dangerous. Do you know what that is? That is when kindness transforms into exploitation through tolerance without boundaries. And that, my friend, is where we are going next. There is a thin line, a very thin line between kindness and exploitation. And the tragedy is many people do not even recognize when that line has been crossed. You start by being helpful. You start by being generous. You start by being considerate. And before you realize it, you are no longer serving out of love. You are being used. And the difference between service and slavery is the presence or absence of respect. When people exploit your kindness, they are not seeing your heart, they are seeing their opportunity. They do not value who you are, they only value what they can get from you. They don't care about the cost, they don't care about the weight you carry, they don't care about your sacrifices. To them, you are not a person, you are a resource. And the moment kindness is reduced to a resource, exploitation has begun. How do you know when kindness turns into exploitation? You know it when people expect your help without gratitude. You know when they demand your support without acknowledgement. You know it when thank you disappears and entitlement replaces appreciation. You know it when they no longer ask, they only take. And the saddest part, the more you give without boundaries, the more they expect without limit. But here, this clearly kindness is powerful, but kindness must be protected. Love is pure, but love must be guarded. Compassion is holy, but compassion must be wise. If you give endlessly, without teaching others the value of what you give, you are not only draining yourself, you are empowering their abuse. And eventually, your kindness becomes the very chain that ties you to disrespect. Exploitation does not begin with strangers. It usually begins with the people closest to you. Family, friends, colleagues, even those you trust the most are often the ones who cross that line. Why? Because they confuse your patience for permission. They confuse your generosity for obligation. They confuse your compassion for weakness. And if you do not establish boundaries, they will continue to exploit the very goodness that was meant to bless them. So I ask you, have you allowed your kindness to be exploited? Have you found yourself drained, weary, empty, because you kept giving and giving while they kept taking and taking? If so, then you know the pain of being valued only for what you do and not for who you are. That is not honor, that is exploitation. But let me remind you, you are not a victim. You are a person of value. And when you understand your worth, you will no longer allow others to exploit your kindness. Because kindness is not weakness, and kindness is not slavery. Kindness is strength, but it is strength with wisdom. And when exploitation continues unchecked, when people keep taking without boundaries, something else begins to happen. What is it? Familiarity steps in, and when familiarity grows, it kills honor. That, my friend, is the next truth we must uncover. Tolerance without boundaries, my friend, is one of the most dangerous traps you can fall into. At first, it looks noble, it looks humble, it looks spiritual, but over time it erodes your dignity and strips away your respect. You tell yourself, I'll let it go, it's not that serious. You tell yourself, I'll stay quiet because I don't want conflict. You tell yourself, I'll give them another chance, maybe they will change. And little by little, without even realizing it, your silence gives birth to their boldness. Your tolerance becomes their permission, and your kindness becomes their weapon. When you tolerate everything, people stop valuing anything. They no longer see the weight of your sacrifice. They no longer honor the price of your patience. They no longer respect your boundaries. Why? Because you never set any. And when there are no boundaries, people assume there are no limits. They will test you, they will push you, they will stretch you, and then they will break you. Let me ask you, have you ever seen how children behave when there are no rules in the house? They become uncontrollable, not because they are bad children, but because no boundary teaches them restraint. The same is true in relationships, in friendships, in workplaces. If you do not draw the line, people will keep crossing it. And the more they cross it, the less respect they have for you. Tolerance must be guided by wisdom. Yes, be patient, but know when patience turns into passivity. Yes, be forgiving, but know when forgiveness turns into foolishness. Yes, be understanding, but know when understanding turns into unnecessary suffering. Because if you tolerate too long, disrespect will grow, dishonor will spread, and exploitation will deepen. Do not confuse peace with passivity. Peace is powerful, peace is active, peace is intentional. Passivity is weakness disguised as patience. When you are passive, you give away your authority. When you are passive, you hand over your dignity. When you are passive, you invite abuse. But when you set boundaries, you teach others how to value you, how to respect you, and how to honor what you bring into their lives. So the question is, what are you tolerating that you should not? Who are you allowing to drain you, to disrespect you, to diminish you, simply because you have not drawn the line? Remember, what you tolerate will never change. What you allow will never stop. and what you refuse to confront will always continue. Tolerance without boundaries is not kindness. It is an open door to dishonor. And dishonor, once it takes root, always leads to destruction. But here is the next level, because when dishonor takes over, something even more subtle begins to happen. Familiarity creeps in, and when familiarity grows unchecked, honor dies. And that is where we are heading next. The danger of overextending yourself is real, and it is costly. You see, there is a difference between giving out of love and giving until you are empty. Many people don't recognize that difference, and they pay the price in silence. You stretch yourself beyond measure. You pour yourself out without rest. You say yes when your heart is screaming no, and before long, you are not serving out of strength. You are serving out of exhaustion. And when exhaustion becomes your foundation, disrespect is never far behind. People rarely value what comes too easy, and when you overextend, you make yourself too available, too accessible, too common. What once was a blessing to them becomes an expectation from them. They stop saying thank you. They stop appreciating the effort. They stop seeing the cost you carry. To them, it is normal because you've trained them to believe that you will always give, always help, always show up. No matter how drained, no matter how tired, no matter how broken you are. But hear me clearly, giving without wisdom is not generosity, it is self-destruction. Even rivers have boundaries, even the ocean has shores, even the sun sets to rest. If creation itself operates with limits, why do you believe you can overextend without consequence? When you give beyond your measure, you lose your joy, you lose your peace, and sometimes you even lose yourself. And here is the truth. When people see you constantly overextending, they begin to see your sacrifice as cheap. They begin to think your time has no value, your energy has no worth, your presence has no cost. But your time is valuable, your energy is priceless, your presence is sacred. You cannot allow anyone to make you feel guilty for resting, for saying no, for protecting your own well-being. Because if you don't protect it, no one else will. Overextending is not just dangerous to you, it is dangerous to your relationships. Why? Because when you are drained, resentment begins to grow. You begin to serve not out of love, but out of obligation. You begin to help not out of joy, but out of guilt. And when resentment takes root, bitterness follows close behind. So let me ask you, are you overextending yourself today? Are you pouring so much into others that you have nothing left for yourself? Are you allowing your generosity to become your prison? If so, it is time to step back. It is time to draw the line. It is time to remember, rest is not weakness. Boundaries are not selfish. And saying no is sometimes the greatest yes to your own purpose. Because when you overextend, you weaken your value in the eyes of others. And once your value is weakened, something even more dangerous begins to creep in. Familiarity takes hold, and when familiarity sets in, honor begins to fade. That, my friend, is the truth we will face next. Familiarity is one of the silent killers of honor. At first, it feels harmless. People grow close to you, they enjoy your presence, they admire your qualities. But the longer they remain around you without discipline, without boundaries, something dangerous begins to happen. They start to take you for granted. They stop seeing the treasure in you. They stop recognizing the value you carry. They stop honoring the uniqueness that once drew them to you. And what happens? Familiarity begins to kill honor. Have you noticed how easily people honor strangers but neglect those closest to them? A guest receives more courtesy than a spouse. A leader from afar receives more respect than a mentor who has been faithful for years. Why? Because what is constant becomes common, and what is common is no longer valued. Familiarity makes the extraordinary look ordinary. It blinds people to the greatness that is right in front of them. When people become too familiar, they forget the weight of your sacrifices. They forget the nights you carried them in prayer, The days you poured into them, the times you stood by them when no one else would. They no longer say thank you because they assume you will always be there. They no longer acknowledge your worth because they believe your presence is guaranteed. Familiarity is dangerous because it shifts people from appreciation to expectation, from gratitude to entitlement. But hear me, honor is the key to maintaining value in every relationship. Where there is no honor, there will be no longevity. Where there is no honor, there will be no respect. Where there is no honor, there will be no growth. That is why you must guard your space, guard your presence, guard your value. Because when you allow people to treat you as common, you are teaching them to disregard what is sacred. Even in spiritual truth, it is said that a prophet is without honor in his own home. Why? Because the people who grew up with him, the people who watched him daily, became so familiar that they could no longer see the greatness within him. They saw the man, but not the mantle. They saw the ordinary, but not the extraordinary. And because of familiarity, they lost the blessing that was meant for them. So let me ask you, has your kindness become so familiar that people no longer value it? Has your presence become so common that others no longer honor it? Has your sacrifice become so constant that no one appreciates it anymore? If so, you must remind yourself, your value is not determined by their familiarity. Your worth is not diminished by their blindness. And your honor must be preserved even if others fail to see it. Because once familiarity kills honor, the next step is even more destructive. People move from devaluing your presence to misusing your nature. And that, my friend, is when the misuse of gentle souls begins. The misuse of gentle souls is one of the most heartbreaking realities of life. Gentle people carry hearts that are soft enough to heal, words that are kind enough to comfort, and spirits that are humble enough to serve. But instead of being celebrated, they are often misused. Their patience is stretched, their compassion is drained, their silence is exploited. And the world, rather than honoring their gentleness, takes advantage of it. Gentleness is not weakness. It is strength under control. It is the ability to remain calm in the storm, to remain kind in the face of cruelty, to remain patient when provoked. But many cannot discern the difference. Instead of respecting gentleness, they try to manipulate it. They believe because you are soft-spoken, you can be silenced. Because you are patient, you can be ignored. Because you are forgiving, you can be abused. And that, my friend, is the misuse of gentle souls. Have you noticed how the strongest people often look like the quietest ones? They carry wisdom, they carry discipline, they carry endurance. But because they do not shout, because they do not fight for attention, because they do not demand recognition, others assume they can be pushed aside. And when people misuse the gentle, they do not just harm the person, they harm themselves. Why? Because when you dishonor a gentle soul, you cut yourself off from the very grace that could have blessed you. Gentle souls were never meant to be doormats. They were never designed to be used or discarded. They were placed in the world to reflect patience, love, and compassion. Yet, when others see their heart as a weakness, they trample it. When others see their humility as naivety, they exploit it. When others see their kindness as unlimited, they consume it. And eventually, if the gentle do not set boundaries, their gift becomes their burden. But here is the truth. When you misuse a gentle soul, you awaken a silent strength within them. They may endure for a season. They may be quiet for a while. But when their spirit decides enough is enough, their departure leaves a void no one can replace. You see, people often recognize the value of a gentle soul only after they lose them. Too late, they realize they misused what was priceless and disrespected what was irreplaceable. So let me ask you, are you one of those gentle souls? Have you been misused, overlooked, disrespected because of your patience, your kindness, your silence? If so, remember this. You are not weak. You are not small. You are not ordinary. You are strong. You are valuable. And you must protect your gift from misuse. Because if you allow others to misuse your nature, they will eventually strip away your respect. And when respect is gone, the story shifts again. Because the truth is, respect is not something you assume. It is something that must be earned. And that is the next lesson we must uncover. Respect is not assumed. Respect is earned. Too many people believe that just because they exist, just because they hold a title, just because they are present, respect should automatically be given to them. But true respect is not built on position alone. It is built on character, on integrity, on consistency. People may honor your title for a moment, but they will only honor your life for a lifetime. When respect is absent, even kindness loses its power. You can be generous, you can be patient, you can be forgiving, but if others do not respect you, they will treat all of it as nothing. Respect is the foundation upon which every relationship stands. Without it, trust crumbles, honor disappears, and love grows cold. That is why you cannot demand respect. You must live in such a way that commands it naturally. Respect is earned through the way you handle your words, the way you keep your promises, the way you live by your principles. It is earned when people see that your yes means yes and your no means no. It is earned when people realize that your kindness is not naivety, but strength. It is earned when you walk with dignity, even when others try to diminish you. Respect cannot be begged for. It cannot be borrowed. It cannot be forced. It must be proven. But here is the danger. When others stop respecting you, it is often because you allowed them to. Every time you let them dishonor your boundaries, you lowered the standard. Every time you excused their abuse, you taught them it was acceptable. Every time you tolerated what you should have rejected, you gave them permission to continue. Respect is a mirror. It reflects back to you what you allow, what you permit, what you set as the standard. Let me ask you, do the people around you respect your time, your effort, your presence? Or have you allowed them to take advantage of your patience? Do they listen when you speak, or do they dismiss your words as if they carry no weight? Do they honor your boundaries, or do they constantly push past them? These questions reveal whether you have set the foundation for respect or allowed the ground to crack beneath you. Remember this: without respect, no relationship can last. Without respect, love cannot thrive. Without respect, kindness becomes weakness and patience becomes slavery. But when respect is present, everything changes. Words carry weight, presence carries value, and relationships carry honor. That is why respect is not a luxury, it is a necessity. And here's the truth: once respect is ignored long enough, silence begins to take over. And when silence is misinterpreted, it does not create peace, it invites abuse. And that, my friend, is the reality we must uncover next. When silence is misunderstood, it becomes one of the greatest invitations to abuse. Silence, in its purest form, can be a sign of wisdom. It can be a moment of reflection. It can be the choice of strength over reaction. But when people around you misinterpret your silence, they begin to think it means consent. They begin to think your quietness is weakness. They begin to think your lack of words is the absence of authority. And that misunderstanding opens the door for disrespect. Have you ever noticed the more silent you are, the bolder some people become? They raise their voices because you don't raise yours. They cross boundaries because you don't confront them. They continue their disrespect because you do not respond. And little by little, your silence becomes their green light, their permission slip, their justification. What you meant as patience, they interpret as passivity. What you meant as grace, they see as fear. What you meant as strength, they see as surrender. But hear me, silence is not weakness. In fact, silence is often the loudest voice in the room. It speaks of restraint. It speaks of self-control. It speaks of maturity. However, when people cannot discern the difference, they abuse it. They assume because you did not correct them, they can continue. They assume because you did not confront them, they can expand. They assume because you did not speak, you have no power. That is why silence must always be balanced with boundaries. There are times when silence is golden, but there are also times when silence is dangerous. Dangerous because it allows abuse to grow unchecked. Dangerous because it gives permission to dishonor. Dangerous because it teaches others that your voice does not matter, when in truth it does. You must know when to be silent and when to speak. You must know when silence protects peace and when silence permits abuse. Let me ask you today, are you being silent in areas where you should be speaking? Are you allowing your quietness to be mistaken for weakness? Are you withholding your voice while others are abusing your value? If so, it is time to speak, not with anger, but with clarity, not with rage, but with authority. Because silence without boundaries is not strength, it is surrender. And surrender in the wrong hands always produces slavery. Remember this, people may not always respect your words, but they cannot ignore your boundaries. And when you pair silence with wisdom and patience with authority, you teach others that your voice may be quiet, but your value is loud. And here is the truth. When silence invites abuse and boundaries are ignored, the balance between compassion and authority must be restored. Because without that balance, kindness itself will be destroyed. And that, my friend, is where we are going next. The balance between compassion and authority is one of the greatest challenges in life. Too much compassion without authority, and you will be used. Too much authority without compassion, and you will become hard, cold, and unapproachable. The secret is in balance. Compassion keeps your heart tender, but authority keeps your boundaries strong. Compassion draws people close, but authority teaches them respect. Compassion gives, but authority guards what is given. And when these two work together, your kindness is protected and your respect is preserved. Have you ever noticed when you show compassion without authority, people start to think they can take advantage of you. They test how far they can push. They stretch how much they can take. They begin to see you as a well that never runs dry. But the truth is, no well can pour without limits. If you do not guard your compassion with authority, others will drain you until there is nothing left. On the other hand, if you show only authority without compassion, people will fear you, but they will never love you. They will respect your presence, but they will not value your heart. Compassion must always walk with authority. Authority says, I will love you, but I will not let you abuse me. Authority says, I will forgive you, but I will not let you repeat the same cycle. Authority says, I will serve you, but I will not become your slave. When compassion is guarded by authority, people learn that your kindness is not weakness, it is power under control. But here is the danger. Many gentle and kind souls lean too heavily on compassion. They give without limit, they forgive without wisdom, they embrace without boundaries. And soon others no longer see them as compassionate, they see them as convenient. That is when dishonor enters, that is when disrespect grows, that is when abuse takes root. But when authority is present, compassion remains pure. It is no longer drained, it is no longer exploited, it is no longer misused. Let me ask you, in your life right now, are you leaning too much on compassion without authority? Are you always giving, but never receiving? Always helping, but never respected? Always serving, but rarely valued? If so, it is time to restore balance. Show compassion, but do it with strength. Show kindness, but do it with boundaries. Show patience, but do it with wisdom. Because balance is the key to protecting both your heart and your honor. When compassion and authority stand together, people will respect you, they will value you, and they will know your presence is not to be played with. For compassion shows your love, but authority preserves your dignity. And here is the truth: once this balance is lost and your compassion is exploited, the next and final stage emerges. People stop seeing kindness altogether, and instead they cross the line into complete devaluation. And that, my friend, is the final reality we must face. When kindness is constantly misunderstood, when compassion is continually exploited, when silence is misinterpreted, and when boundaries are ignored, the inevitable result is complete devaluation. People stop seeing who you are, and they only see what they can use. They no longer treat you as a person, they treat you as a tool. They no longer respect your presence, they assume it. They no longer value your sacrifice, they expect it. And when that happens, your kindness is no longer honored, it is completely dismissed. Devaluation is the most painful stage because it makes you invisible. You can give, but it is not enough. You can serve, but it is not appreciated. You can love, but it is not returned. People begin to treat your greatness as if it were ordinary, your sacrifice as if it were nothing, your presence as if it were replaceable. And that, my friend, is the deepest form of disrespect. But here is the truth. You teach people how to value you by the way you value yourself. If you continue to allow others to misuse, to exploit, to dishonor, then you are giving them permission to devalue your worth. But the moment you rise up and say, I will not be treated as common, I will not be dishonored, I will not be disrespected, everything changes. Because value is not given to you by others, it is established by you. Even the rarest jewels are not found everywhere, and they are never handled carelessly. Why? Because they are guarded, they are protected, they are preserved. You too must guard your value. You must protect your kindness. You must preserve your dignity. Because when you understand your worth, no one can devalue you, no one can strip your honor, no one can diminish your presence. So let me ask you, have you allowed people to devalue your kindness? Have you been giving without being appreciated, serving without being respected, loving without being honored? If so, it is time to reclaim your worth. Stand tall, speak clearly, set boundaries boldly, and remind the world that your kindness is a treasure, not a weakness. Because the truth is this: kindness without wisdom leads to disrespect, compassion without authority leads to exploitation, and silence without boundaries leads to abuse. But when you guard your kindness with wisdom, with strength, with authority, it becomes one of the most powerful forces in the world. So today, choose to protect your kindness. Choose to honor your own value. Choose to set the standard of how others must treat you. Because when you do, your kindness will no longer be mistaken for weakness. It will be celebrated as strength. And your life will no longer be lived in the shadow of disrespect, but in the light of dignity, purpose, and honor.